All right, let's welcome back one of the most popular guests on Straight Fire. He's a TV fixture. He's famous in Baltimore. He summers in Nantucket. He's like one of the Ohio State big dogs sitting front row with the, all right, I've said enough nice things. Albert Breer, SI.com. Albert, how you doing, man?
Good. How you doing, J-Mac?
I'm excellent. I know obviously this is a tough time for you. The Buckeyes are playing bad teams, so you can't. That being said, let's start with college football. Overall, your early read on Buckeye season. Are they going to go back to back?
I think they've got a chance to. I mean, I think Julian Saint's playing really good football at quarterback, and Matt Patricia, one of the big questions coming in. I think he's done a great job. They've got a real identity on defense now, and look, I think they've probably got the two best players in the country right now on their roster, and Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs, and so. Yeah, you still have some questions, of course, like, well, how's the offensive line come along, as part of that? What does the run game look like? We get into late October and into November. Defensive tackle, I think, would be the big question on defense. But I think they can work that stuff out. The talent certainly there to repeat. We'll see. We'll see if they can pull it off. Takes a lot of luck too. So, we'll see what happens.
All right, so I'm going to back one more college football thing, but I want to back in using. I saw an interesting tweet from you this week about the how social media is getting people like to lose their minds about quarterbacks on like a week to week basis. You're
Yep.
awesome. You suck. You're terrible. People are going crazy. Can we just start with Arch Manning on that? Because for the last seven
Yeah.
months, I heard he's the Heisman favorite. This guy's the man. He's going to go number one. Listen, I was buying into the hype. Vegas had him as the Heisman favorite. So it's not just regular people and podcasters. But Albert, we've got like three data points so far this season, two of them against bad teams. Arch Manning has been bad this so far at 55% completions. So is that the internet overreacting? What are you seeing?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a product of expectations that were, sent into the stratosphere because of his last name, because of his recruiting ranking. And look, like I remember having this conversation with, I think I called about a half dozen scouts, who I know, like I regularly go through Austin to talk to them about this at the beginning of May because I saw the way too early mock drafts that had him number one overall, and I'm like, that seems insane. Like I've never seen that before where there is a guy who has legitimately not been a starter yet. Now he started two games, but those two games
Right.
were against a directional school and the worst team in the SEC last year, right? So I called around and the opinion I got is like we don't know either way. We just haven't seen enough, you know.
Right.
And I think like people look at it and think it's all about like your height and your arm strength and your athleticism, and there's so much more that goes into the position than just the physical traits you bring to the table. And so what they'd all say is like seems like a great kid, gets along with everybody in that program, has a great relationship with Quinn Ewers, which I think says a lot about both those guys. And he looks good so far on tape, but we just don't know because how often against what was it? I think it was like Central Arkansas and UT. No, it was Mississippi State and was it Central Arkansas? Is that right? Or
I
UTSA?
think it was Sam Houston State or UTEP,
Right.
maybe
So whoever it
something like
was,
that.
like it was, in those two games, how often was Arch Manning running a play that wasn't run exactly the way that they were prescribing it in practice, right? Like how often in those two games was the opponent forcing him past his first read? How often in those games was the rush getting to him? How often did you have to see him move? How often did you have to see him bounce back from a three and out or a couple three and outs in a row? How many different coverages did he
Mm.
see? And I think this is why, like the baseline for quarterbacks generally, the number I've heard is 25 starts. Like the NFL wants 25 starts because if you have 25 starts, you'll have been forced to grow through a lot of things. You'll be a first time starter, then six or seven starts in. Like defenses will start to get a book on you. They'll start to figure out what you're good at. They'll take that away. Now all of a sudden you've got a counterpunch. You've got to learn how to do things a little bit differently than maybe you did at the start. Over time, you'll start to build up a library of different coverages and different rush looks in your head and be able to diagnose those and deal with them a little bit better. And the pros will then have had a chance to see like defenses throw different looks at you on a continual basis. And so like I think
Mm.
like it was just I'm going to call it what it was. Stupid that we were projecting him to go first overall when we just didn't have the information. Again, it never happened before. Like if his last name was Smith, because of his recruiting ranking, Texas fans would have been really excited about him. But how many other fans would have even heard of him, Let alone you have all these people putting him first overall. So I think the effect of that, J-Mac, and this is where I'm going to swing it back, like bring it back around. The effect of that is that everybody had their expectations way up here. And the reality was like they're just I like he was it cost him the chance to kind of grow in silence
Yeah.
and work through some things. And I went back and I looked at Cam Ward when he first made the move to the FBS, coming from Incarnate Word and going to Washington State. And he had a stretch in there where he threw 7 picks in 4 games. Do you think anybody even noticed that? you know, like so, like he was afforded the chance to grow through that stuff. Nobody was worried about him as an NFL draft prospect when he first became a starter. And this is a guy who had 2 years starting at a lower level under his belt already. So, I think that's sort of what this has cost Arch Manning is like all the hype, the NIL money he took. So, it's not like he was turning down NIL deals. But I think the reason why Cooper Manning raised his kid the way that he did and tried to tamp down the hype as much as he possibly could was because he knew like if they build him up to be this when he's only accomplished this, well, then when he performs like this, it's going to feel like he fell off of a cliff. And so I think that's what it feels like to a lot of people because you built him up way up here. Now it feels like because he's playing down here, like he fell off this cliff when maybe it's really just the start of a process of growing for a really talented kid who, by all accounts, has a really good head on his shoulders.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's well said. It should be noted this is year 3 for him at Texas.
Right.
It's not like he's some freshman.
And that's fair too. Yeah.
It's a good example. Remember Carson Beck? He will do a similar thing. And Carson Beck looks like the best quarterback. By the way, 2026 quarterback class that was so hyped. I mean, Cade Klubnik, he's been bad, multi-year starter. Nussmeier's fallen off a little since that opener. Now there's a report that he's maybe injured. Sellers got knocked out with a concussion. I don't know that the quarterback class is great. Carson Beck does look good. I would say he looks like the best quarterback so far.
I think and again, I think like a lot of this, like we have to let it play out. I think the other example you mentioned year 3, Jaden Daniels, like if he had come out from Arizona State after 3 years instead of transferring to LSU, like he might have gone undrafted, So I think these things evolve over time. And I said this coming in, like I think there's probably 5 or 6 guys that are draft eligible this year that have a chance to ascend to that level, but it doesn't mean they're going to be up there right away. Like we haven't talked about Drew Aller because they haven't played anybody yet, right? Like, but eventually we're going to be taking a closer look at Drew Aller, who if you look at him, like has the physical traits, right? Like he looks like a top 10 pick. You know what I mean? Like when you just like look at who he is physically. Nussmeier is going to have a chance to atone for some of the to work through the injury and everything else. And I like Klubnik. I think is somebody that you look at and like, yes, that's been disappointing through the first couple of weeks. We have to let this stuff play out. So I don't think I think the way I described this class coming into the year, I still feel this way was you have 5 or 6 guys that have a chance, I think, to be in that top 10, top 15 conversation, right? But I don't think we came into this year with like Caleb Williams and Drake May 2 years ago, where Jaden Daniels ascended to that level, but we weren't talking about him that way, like before the season. Like we knew at the beginning of the year, Caleb Williams and Drake May are going to be very high draft picks. I didn't quite feel that way about any of the guys going into this year, but I thought a handful of them had a chance to be on that level, which I think is still where we're at.
Yeah. All right, let's pivot to the NFL, Albert. And I'm assuming your tweet about the quarterbacks was in reference to CJ Stroud, who, again,
it's in reference
first
to
year, no doubt, he was awesome. Okay, we'll start with Stroud. So he was awesome 2 years as a rookie. And Bryce Young was so bad being number 1 that Stroud looked even better maybe than he was.
Yep.
I still remember his first game. I bet against him with Baltimore. He was terrible against Baltimore in that opener. Right. Year 2, some regression. Year 3 has started, and he looks like ass. He cannot complete anything on third down. He's like terrible in the red zone. And I know, new offensive line. He's missing Christian Kirk. He's missing his blocking tight end, so there's no run game. And it just feels like we're
New
making a lot of
coordinator,
excuses for CJ Stroud.
new coordinator.
Coordinator, it's true. Listen, I'm just going off what I've seen from two games.
Yeah.
He's looked bad, but I don't know. I'm not burying him and saying he's
Mhm.
terrible, but he has been terrible. Like I know it's a tough, difficult
So,
discussion, right?
right. Like, I mean, a rookie left tackle, two rookie receivers that are playing, an offensive line that is just, I mean, was a mess last year, and they're trying to fix it. They felt like it
Yeah.
was toxic in that room last year. Um, I just think that there's a lot that they've got to work through early in the year. And like, I think the idea here is to put more on CJ Stroud's shoulders. In other words, like last year, I know he was frustrated by not having much control to change things at the line of scrimmage, and he wanted that. So they go from, sort of the Shanahan system, which is what Bobby Slowick brought, where the quarterback is sort of one of 11. And yes, he's got some power, but for the most part, in the like normal version of that system, which, has been adjusted for guys like Stafford and Rodgers over the years, the protection calls are on the center. You have a pretty defined system of you see this, it's this play, you see this, it's this play. And so he wanted more control at the line, and he wanted to have a little bit more say because he did at Ohio State. And so they bring in a guy in Nick Caley from the Rams who had some background in the Shanahan system, having worked for McVay, but also most of his background is in the Patriot system, which gives the quarterback a ton of power. That's the Tom Brady system. And so I think there's a little bit of a process going on there. I believe CJ said something that alluded to that today. So I think it's just like a lot of moving parts right now. And I know it doesn't help you do your show today, but I do think like this is one of those where 4 weeks in, 6 weeks in, it wouldn't surprise me if it clicks for him. I think that's got a chance to be a really good team with
Okay.
one caveat. The caveat
Really?
being the caveat being the offensive line needs to come along. So Ursary, their starting left tackle, is a rookie. They need to figure they need a high level of play from him at a very important position. They got to figure out the interior. Is Patterson the guy at center? Are they going to keep Titus Howard at right tackle? Is he going to move inside the guard? All of that needs to work itself out too. But I think if they play really well on the offensive line, um, they've got a defense that's championship caliber, and I think CJ can get back to what he was
Hmm.
as a rookie. But a lot of it
I don't
depends. If
know.
you want to divorce a quarterback from his situation, you can't do that. His situation is not great right now. It's what they expected. The expectation, the way they built it was 4 6 weeks into the year, it's going to look a lot better, and we'll see if that happens or not.
Yeah. So Jalen Hurts has had like five offensive coordinators in 5 years, not making excuses. But you said Bobby Slowick. And
But
I remember when he was the
all for the
belle of the
same
ball
system, though.
during
They
Stroud's
were
rookie
all.
year.
What's that?
I just looked up Shanahan. Shanahan had Bobby Slowick in his system with the Niners, right?
Right.
And he was awesome play calling for Houston in year one,
Yep.
Stroud's rookie year. Year two, he's terrible all of a sudden, and then he's fired. Do you even know Slowick right now is the senior pass game coordinator of
With
the
Miami.
Dolphins?
Yep. Yep.
What? That's quite a fall. First of all, what happened to Stroud last year? Can we really
Yeah.
blame it on the offensive line?
I think so. Like, there were a few things. I would say things were toxic in the offensive line room, which is why they trade Laramie Tunsil. And it wasn't necessarily that Laramie Tunsil was the problem. It was just that as a captain, I don't know if they could count on him as being part of the solution. So
That
they
makes
they
sense.
move him, which is a huge risk. It's a massive risk to move your left
Big
tackle
risk.
like that. But they made that decision. So
Yeah.
you move your left tackle, and they felt like the offense hadn't adjusted and changed enough to where when you go into year two as an offensive coordinator, you have to there has to be like a level of change that comes with defenses catching up to what you're doing. And there was a feeling internally that that didn't happen enough. And I think Stroud saw that and he became frustrated that he couldn't change and adjust things on the fly to remedy that, which I think led to more problems and ultimately the discussions that ended with Bobby Slowick being out, which is
Hmm.
I know it's like kind of like it jumps out at people, right? This is a guy who was interviewing for head coaching jobs a year ago. But getting your quarterback position right is really, really, really important. And I think some of the situation there between quarterback and coordinator had frayed a little bit too.
My favorite game of the weekend is Eagles Rams.
Love it.
It's
Yeah,
weird.
great
The
game. Yeah.
Eagles, everybody says the Eagles are amazing, and they've been good to me the first 2 weeks betting. Albert, they have the fewest plays over 15 yards in the
Yep.
league.
Hmm.
And I get it. Like, hey, we've got a system that works. They also face two pretty below average defenses in Dallas and Kansas City. And
Well,
yes,
Kansas
Kansas City
City's good.
defense
I
is
would
below
I would say
average this year.
Dallas. I'll take you at face value on
What?
Dallas.
Justin Herbert. I mean, Justin Herbert rolled them up and down the field. I saw
Look
some
great.
pressure. They can't get pressure with four. They've got a blitz, and their back end is not good. Bottom line is, I think the Eagles, I don't want to say overvalue, but I think I like the Rams getting 3.5 this week. I know the Witherspoon loss is big. I'm just curious how you see that matchup unfolding, Rams Eagles.
Well, they went bad. They went in there. They went in there and almost beat them in January. And
Yeah.
really, we're a play or two away from beating them in a snowstorm, which is Philly's environment, not LA's environment. So,
But I
uh,
think they went to SoFi and murdered the Rams, right? Didn't
yeah,
Saquon rush for like 200 yards? Yeah, that's right.
yeah. I mean, I think like this one really comes down to that Rams defensive front and the job that they do to get the Eagles in obvious passing situations and then rush Jalen Hurts. And, I think that's easier said than done. But I think we saw it at the end of the Kansas City game. I mean, like the Eagles' offensive line, for all the warts on offense right now, the Eagles' offensive line still churned out that first down when everybody in the building knew it was coming, right? Like with about 7 minutes left in the game, they go Barkley, then tush push first down. That tears another 2 minutes off the clock. And then after Kansas
Yeah.
City came back and scored, the Chiefs were so concerned with that happening again that they tried the onside kick when they could have kicked it away there because they knew what could happen. Then that was justified by the Eagles being able to do the same thing once again. And so, like, I would pay less attention to the score and the yardage here. What I pay attention to with the Eagles right now and the way that they're playing is the game control. And it never felt like that game was in the Chiefs' control. It felt like the Chiefs were chasing the whole time. And the Rams have to create a situation where they seize control of the game. And that might be by putting an early score on the board. It certainly, I think, has to be by slowing down the running game. But the strength of that Rams team really is in its defensive front. And so, you talk about Witherspoon and the injury and everything else. Their corner situation isn't great with the Rams, but that's sort of a conscious decision they've made and where they're making their investments and investing in players up front. And so, playing against one of the best offensive lines in football, probably the best offensive line in football, I think the key here is get them in obvious passing situations. Then you can dial it up, and then you can make Jalen Hurts a little less comfortable. If they're constantly in, second and six and third and three, I think it could be a long day for the Rams. So that to me would be the key.
Is there any game that jumps out at you this weekend? And listen,
Yeah, Lions,
there's some teams
Ravens.
I'm kind of. Which one? Oh,
Lions,
Lions Ravens.
Ravens.
Did you see that line was 6? The Ravens were favored by 6, and it's down to like 4.5 or 4. I don't
Yeah,
know
I
why
didn't
what people are seeing in Detroit. It's like, come on, it's one game against the sad sack Bears.
I don't track that as closely as you do, but I thought it was interesting. I talked to Jameer Gibbs about this, after they beat the brakes off the Bears, and he said to me, I
Yeah.
asked him like what the problem was in Green Bay, and I thought that was an interesting answer. He said it was communication. He said that we had a really hard time, and if you think about it, that actually makes some sense. So the Packers come in and the Lions have zero idea like how Micah Parsons is going to affect that game, right? And if you look at the three main communicators on game day on the field, who are they? Right, J-Mac? It's the center, the quarterback, and the coordinator. Well, two of those three pieces from last year are gone for the Lions. So I think part of this was them working through that stuff and find and okay, like now we had a game against a really good defense where it didn't look right. How can we go in and address that? They had a chance to sort that stuff, iron it out at home. Now they go back on the road and we'll see what it looks like again. But I mean, I think it's kind of funny. I think the Lions had like a little bit of a hair across their ass on the whole Ben Johnson conversation too. It was like they're going up against
Oh.
Ben. They're going up against Ben. And the conversation coming out of the first game was they miss Ben. And I think there are a lot of prideful guys in that huddle. Guys like Taylor Decker and Panay Sewell and Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jamison Williams and Sam Laporta and Jameer Gibbs and Jared Goff that are basically saying like, okay, so you think it was all the coaching. you don't think we've got a really loaded offensive group. And I think that's the case. Like I think that the talent is still really, really good there. Ben deserves all the credit he got for being as creative as he was the last couple of years, but that's still a damn good offense. And it'll be interesting to see if the Ravens make the Lions look more like they made the Browns look last week, or if it looks more like the Buffalo game of 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, well, the Josh Allen scrambling is removed because Jared Goff ain't going anywhere, and
Yeah.
I don't know. I just I
But
can't get it out of
remember,
my
Josh
head.
Allen beat him from the pocket at the end of that
He
game.
did well
Yeah.
when they were coming back, but the
Yeah.
threat to run, I
Yeah.
think, kind
Sure.
of made them think. Like I just remember the last time the Lions went there. The Lions were 5-1, and it was 35-0 in the third quarter, and I mean it was just an absolute ass kicking.
Yep.
Outdoors, you're not on the fast surface. I don't. I just I feel like the Lions, they're not. What are the Lions closer to the Bears result or the Packers result?
I mean, that depends on what you think of the Bears and Packers, right? Do you do you view the disparity of the Bears and Packers as that wide? If it is that wide, and then the Packers have looked like, I mean, what, like you don't think I'm talking out of school to say like Packers look like one of the two or three best teams in football, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so where are the Bears?
They're probably in the 22 to 28 range, right?
All right, so if that's the case, then
You
I
think?
mean maybe the two results sort of match up. I think the Lions are still I
Hmm.
think the Lions are still a playoff team. I would not look at them and say there's no way they make it. Here's why. Because they do lose Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, and those are big losses. There's no question about it. But remember what they did last year, right? So like last year, they went 15-2 despite losing what three or four or five of their best defensive players. They had no Aiden Hutchinson at the end. They had no Aleem McNeil at the end. They were taping it together at linebacker. Anzalone got hurt. Like Campbell had been hurt. Like they had a historic amount of injuries last year on the defensive side of the ball. And so, in one way, yeah, they lose something from that 15-win team. But in another way, if they can just manage to stay a little bit healthier, the talent should be better than what they were putting on the field last year, right? And that's
Yeah.
notwithstanding the loss of Frank Ragnow. So, I still think the Lions are now, are they going to win 15 games again? No, I don't think
No.
so. But could I see them winning 11 or 12? Yeah, I could definitely see them winning 11 or 12.
Wow. Bullish. Now the offensive line remains really, really.
And
I mean, Taylor Decker. I don't know if he's going to play. He missed last week. It didn't matter, but the home
but
road
that's the
splits for
big
the
question,
Lions.
right? Like,
Yeah.
because, and I think that's the big question to me. Like, that was the biggest thing coming out of that Packer game that I was worried about was like the offensive line did kind of get its ass kicked in that Packer game. So much of like the personality of that team since Dan Campbell's got there has been through this just dominating offensive line, right?
Mm.
So is the offensive line by the end of the year with Graham Glasgow playing center and Tate Ratledge in there at guard, and as a rookie, does he wind up eventually moving from guard over to center? Like how all of that stuff works out, I think goes a long way to where we set their ceiling for
All right.
2025.
We could wrap up just brief. Well, I got two more. Sorry. Briefly, I got to give Daniel Jones some props. I did not see this coming.
Yeah.
He's been excellent. Saint Steichen. You have to wonder what Anthony Richardson's is going through his head right now. Is he like, get me out of here? I couldn't do anything. And Daniel Jones is out here looking like Joe Montana. I think they got lucky to beat the Broncos, so I'm tempering expectations.
Yeah. I mean, that was
actually
a
like the
weird penalty at
Titans.
the end for
That was
sure.
a bullshit penalty, man. Let's call it what it was. I actually think the Titans are very live to win outright. Now, this is the first time the Colts are leaving the dome. The Titans went from facing arguably two of the top five defenses in the league, right?
Yeah.
The Rams are excellent, maybe top seven. Rams are excellent, obviously, and the Broncos at home are a truck. I think the Titans can win this outright. What do you think about the Titans?
I think Colts are going to win the game. Like
Okay.
I think the Titans are going to be better at the end of the year. I think what's coming here is like I think the comparison is probably Seattle when Pete Carroll and John Schneider first got there in 2010, where the depth is so shaky that they're going to be constantly churning the roster. And like I mean, you're going to see over 100 players go through that place over the course of the season. Like I just
Wow.
think, and there's going to be a constant churn of guys in and out and everything else. And I think that's going to continue. And, you hope you find the right mix coming out of the year. I think Cam Ward's actually acquitted himself pretty well
Yeah.
through 2 weeks, despite the fact that the offense hasn't played great. They don't have a lot around him. Um, I, I think the Colts are so interesting, man. Like when I was there, like a couple guys gave me this stat, which I thought was fascinating, which was like last year they were 29th in the NFL in total defense and 30th in giveaways, and they still won 8 games. And if you really think about that, it's like, okay, like they bring in Lou Anarumo from Cincinnati to fix the defense. And the feeling was, as far as the giveaway thing, we feel like we are good enough around the quarterback to win. We just need a quarterback who can come in here and put his hands at 10 and 2 and run the offense. And that's what Anthony Richardson wasn't giving them. And essentially, that was a bet
Mm.
that Alec Pierce, that Michael Pittman, that Josh Downs, that Tyler Warren coming in as a rookie, Jonathan Taylor. It was that those guys are good enough that they just needed somebody who can come in and run the offense at a competent level. And all of a sudden we would get a completely different picture. And through 2 weeks, that's what it looks like now. The warning is what happened with the Saints last year, right?
Yes.
The Saints had a couple of changes, and it looked awesome through 2 weeks, and then within a month, maybe a little more than a month, the head coach was being fired.
Yes.
So like I'm not saying like that, yeah, the Daniel Jones Colts offense that we've gotten over the first 2 weeks is absolutely what we're going to see for the next 3.5 months. But it does look like the bet that they made, which was we're good enough around the quarterback. We just need the quarterback to come in and run the offense the way we want him to run the offense. Actually looks like it's paying off.
Yeah. Final one. If I told you to name the top 4 teams in the league through 2 weeks, it's early. Is it pretty clear in whatever order it's Packers, Eagles, Bills, Ravens? Who would be fifth through 2 weeks? And
I
obviously
think
we're
I'd
not going to say
probably
the
agree with
Colts.
you, Pack. I mean, I might put the Rams fifth, and
Okay.
like I say that but they haven't proven it yet. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Fair.
I mean, that's a little hard. They beat the Texans. I think that's a good win. That was at home, and then they beat the Titans, which doesn't show you a ton.
Mhm. Well, okay. Let
Um,
me adjust. Let me adjust. Sorry. Um, for the AFC, it feels like there's Bills, Ravens, and then a drop off. And
Chargers.
I was okay. I was gonna go there. Like they're better than the Chiefs right now, right? It's early. I know Xavier
Yeah.
Worthy's gonna freaking save
Well,
the day.
so I would say with the Chiefs, rookie left tackle, I would say Xavier Worthy's hurt. Rashi Rice is back after week 6, which I think takes a ton of pressure off Travis Kelce, and they can use Travis Kelce differently. So I think the Chiefs, if you're the Chiefs, you're sort of treading water, figuring out what the rest of the guys can do until you get back to full strength. I think the Chargers, um, man, I hated it for them that they lost Rashawn Slater because when I went to their camp, like you're down the street, you could go down and see this.
Yeah.
The physical size of the team really jumped out at me at training camp. Like, holy crap, this is a Jim Harbaugh team. You know what I mean? So
Mm.
I think you have that. Like, it looks like a team that is going to be able to come out and really lean on teams and get stronger as the year goes on. As the season starts to set in the guys' legs a little bit. Like, I think they're a team that can kind of push other teams around. And I love the way that Justin Herbert's played so far. And
Hmm.
it was interesting. I had this conversation with Greg Roman when he got back from Brazil, their offensive coordinator.
Oh yeah.
And he said to me, he said, like, the big thing he flew up to Oregon this summer, and he said the big thing that he did that he wanted to impress on Justin Herbert was that it's okay to run, which I thought was interesting, right? And he brought him a bunch of cut ups of Mahomes and Allen. And the whole thing was how backbreaking it is for a defense when they do everything right. And all of a sudden now you got this big athletic guy running through the secondary. You know what I mean? Like, you cover it right, your rush is good, and all of a sudden he just sneaks out and picks up 7 or 8 yards, and now all of a sudden it's first down again. And
Hmm.
like Roman said to me, Justin had a really good year last year, but because of the plantar fasciitis that cost him all of training camp, and because of the ankle, they weren't able to install as much of the offense last year, and he wasn't able to be as much of an athlete. And they feel like now they're at a point where you're going to get the full version of Justin Herbert. And I mean, it looks really good through 2 weeks, right? So The Slater injury was a big one. Khalil Mack, it looks like they dodged a bullet there. They'll lose him for a little bit, but not as long as it might have looked. It looked to me like it was
Is
bad when it
this
happened.
IR?
So, like, I mean, we'll see. But I do think I think he talks here in a little bit, right? Like, so I'm not sure about
Okay.
that, but I do think it's something where they're going to have him back at some point. And like, I look at it like this is I mean, you've watched these teams enough. Like, it looks like Stanford, it looks like the Niners, it looks like Michigan. You know what I mean? Like, it's that sort of team again. And so I wouldn't bet against Jim Harbaugh having a real chance to win that division. So maybe they're the third team in the AFC
Mhm.
after Buffalo and Baltimore. Again, like Houston and Kansas City, I think linger as talented teams that have a chance to ascend to that. Cincinnati obviously has the injury now. I mean, the AFC
Mhm.
already looks a little bit different than we thought it would a couple weeks ago.
100%. Yeah. By the way, does Harbaugh ever give you shit about being an Ohio State guy, or have you guys discussed
He
that?
and I have had some talks about it. I respect his work. I'll put it that way.
Oh!
Hey, he gave us the little piece of motivation we needed to put it over the top last year, right? No, I like Jim. I actually really appreciate Jim. He's an interesting character for sure.
Yeah. Albert Breer, one of the best in the business. Keep up the good work, buddy, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, thanks, guys. Thanks, J Mac. I appreciate it.